A very good evening and welcome to this Palm Sunday edition of the Fourth Estate. Charles Mwangu Shampagi, and as Christians begin the Holy Week leading to Easter next Sunday, we'll be discussing issues within one of the major opposition political parties, or one of the major political parties in the country, the Uganda People's Congress. A few weeks ago, we hosted one of the leaders from that party. Today, we'll bring you another leader from that party to understand what is going on, what is wrong with the party, the only party in this country that has held power twice. That is the Uganda People's Congress. Let me start by introducing my colleague, Chris Obore. Chris, very nice to have you. And it was a very interesting discussion you had yesterday about the fate of soldiers, policemen, members of the armed forces of this country contributing to what they think should be their welfare in these circles within the armed forces, the UPDF, the police, and I think the Uganda Prison Service.
Basically, to do with the armed forces, you know, Uganda, the idea of SACCOS is a very good philosophy. People want to discuss how good it is, but they don't discuss how it is being managed.
Okay.
And in the armed forces, Charles, it is terrible.
We'll have a discussion on that on another occasion. Let me introduce Ambassador Olara Otunnu, Party President of the Uganda People's Congress Party. Very nice to have you, Ambassador.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and good evening to all the viewers on this Palm Sunday.
It's contestable whether he is still the party president.
Yeah, I have a letter he wrote.
So? You
Where is the contestation?
The basis on which you make that statement.
No,
I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Your colleagues contest that your term expired. So we are
happy
fighting
for us to discuss that.
Okay.
And actually, that's the question I'll start with. On the 4th of March, 2015.
This month.
This month, yes. You wrote to the national chairman of the Uganda People's Congress, Professor Edward Kakonge, indicating, talking about two principal subjects, the National Council and the National Delegates Conference. My information is you were required by the party constitution to have held the Delegates Conference or the National Council by the 9th of March. So 5 days to the day you must have held a Delegates Conference, you decided to write and indicate that you would not be contesting for re-election. But effectively, your term should have expired by the 9th of March. And that is the contestation that Chris is talking about. What exactly has been going on in the party?
In my hand is the constitution of UPC. There is no such provision in this constitution, none whatsoever. When I spoke to the country on the 4th of March, I did not resign, I did not leave Uganda House, there is no change at UPC headquarters. It was simply to give notice to UPC members that when the time comes to renew national leadership of UPC, I do not plan to seek re-election. So they would have enough time to prepare, to look around. Those who are interested to succeed me would also have enough time to present themselves and to be scrutinized.
By your constitution, how many delegates conferences are you supposed to hold?
By our constitution, we are supposed to have a delegates conference every 3 years.
Every 3 years.
This constitution.
And
also we're supposed to have national council, and we are supposed to have
National Council how many times?
National Council at least once every year, and then the party cabinet is the main organ which runs the party on an ongoing basis. That there's no provision, but we have the party cabinet religiously, without fail, on the last Thursday of every month. Now, the two bodies which I speak about, the National Council, the National Council is a big body. It's very costly to convene it by UPC or by any other organization.
Before you go into the justification, Ambassador Otunnu, you became president of the Uganda People's Congress in 2010. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
And since 2010, you haven't held a single national council. You haven't held a single national conference, a delegates conference for the party in 5 years.
Can I correct you?
Sure.
we have held a national council under my presidency.
How many times? One.
Yes,
the national council
yes,
just one.
Yes, we've had one national council under my presidency, and we have resolutions from that national council. We have not had a delegates conference. Incidentally, this is nothing particularly unique. Before I became party president, for years, not just 5 years, for years, there had not been a delegates conference. The National Council was held just a few weeks before the delegates conference in which I was elected. The main reason for this, then and now, is not about the political difficulties. It's very costly to finance both the National Council and the delegates conference. We have been in UPC planning and requesting the Milton Obote Foundation, which is really our internal, you could say, is our internal supporter, is our internal donor within the party. And over the last several years, the answer was, we are in financial difficulties, we are not able to fund the National Council, we are not able to fund the delegates conference. External donors are not very keen to fund meetings of parties. They can fund projects, they can fund programs, and those we got, but they are not very keen to fund simply a meeting, a gathering of party members. Yes.
The question that, the promise that you made, seeking the leadership of the Uganda People's Congress in 2010, was exactly to straighten out things like that, to have the party leadership, meet more regularly, plan better, and have resources. And now your opponents say the reason you're trying to give us a justification and say there were no resources to hold these meetings of these very important bodies in the party. Your opponents say you failed to lead the party, you failed to do those meetings because you feared that had you held meetings of those bodies, you would have been ousted from the leadership of the party.
I suppose you are referring to the Akena poll call group, who have been marching up and down since my election, particularly the Honorable Jimmy Akena. He did not accept the outcome of the delegates conference in which I was elected. We were 8 candidates for the election. I garnered about 70% of the votes. Honorable Akena was a candidate. He did not accept the outcome of the elections. When we went into the general elections of 2011, Honorable Akena, particularly in the Lango sub-region, the Teso sub-region, was a UPC leader telling party members, UPC is not ready to provide the presidency. For the presidency, vote for the person who will bring back your cows. For parliament, vote for UPC. Now, there's only one candidate who spoke about bringing back the cows, the person who had taken the cows in the first place, which is Yoweri Museveni and his NRA. So you had Honorable Jim Akena in the elections of 2011 campaigning for UPC members to vote for Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Immediately following the elections, you heard about something called the pressure group, UPC pressure group, formed by Honorable Jim Akena, and so on and so forth. Just to say that from day one, Honorable Jimmy Akena, who was a candidate, who lost in the elections, never accepted the new national leadership.
And that means
went from one episode to another,
the next and to another,
undermining the activities of the new party leadership.
And precisely for that reason, Ambassador Olara Otunnu, who was elected president of UPC, was unable to hold meetings of major party organs because he was afraid that had he held that meeting, he would be ousted from the party leadership.
Well, let me give you this information. When we held the National Council, it was exactly in the thick of the campaign of what Honorable Jim Akena called the UPC pressure group, when they were calling for my ouster and the ouster of the national leadership. That was when we held the National Council. We met together and we had very lively debates on key policy issues. Honorable Jim Akena took one side, the national leadership proposed one direction, And one by one, the delegates were able to decide in a clear-cut manner which direction UPC should take. I wasn't ousted. Nothing happened to the national leadership. At the height of the campaign by the UPC pressure group to oust the national leadership. So if our concern was about what that group was doing, we would never have held that national
But
council.
you held one.
We have been,
you
hold on.
held one,
No.
you're unable to hold another.
Well, I explained to you, it is very costly, not just for UPC. It is costly for all the parties. We have been preparing for the National Council. We are going to hold the National Council as well as the Delegates Conference.
When?
Just this last week, finally, the chairman of the Milton Obote Foundation, Ambassador Barungi, in a discussion, told me, assured me, the Milton Obote Foundation will make available resources for the holding of the National Council and the Delegates Conference.
Okay.
We have, let me just finish. We have all the plans in place. We've been having a planning team in place for a long time. All the other aspects are in place. What is now standing, ironically, interestingly, and crucially, between UPC and the Delegates Conference and National Council is the action of the Akena Pulkol group, namely the court injunction which they slapped last year on the party with the effect of freezing all party activities. We cannot hold the National Council, we cannot hold the Delegates Conference while the court injunction is in place.
So
that is why, in my statement,
by that problem,
I called on the Akena Pulkol group to immediately, without excuse, without qualification, to immediately withdraw the court injunction that they put on the party.
I'll come back to you with questions. Let me first bring Chris Oboro into this discussion. Chris, one of the major criticisms to political parties is extension of party leadership or failure to have functional internal party democracy. Ambassador Otunnu has played at the highest level imaginable. He's been at the United Nations championing democracy, especially in the developing world. You follow, you and I and Chris Oboro used to sit next to one another at the monitor for very many years. So when the time was coming for a delegates conference or a national conference, we'll be exchanging notes. The stories we're hearing speak far differently from what Ambassador Otunnu is telling us. From your sources within the UPC, what is the problem over the last 5 years?
Maybe I think we have begun by discussing the effects of what I think has a long-standing cause. Permit me to give a historical perspective of my view of UPC and any other opposition party and why they are facing what they are facing today. We will then discuss the issues of their delegates conference. If my memory serves me very well, Charles, when UPC was hosted, Milton Obote at one point issued a statement and said, let nobody in UPC participate in elective politics under NRM. There was a big debate in UPC, and I remember Cecilio Gwal led a group that said, no, we must go and fight from within. Obote had expressed instructions that the moment you get in there, you are not going to keep UPC alive. And remember, it came on the backdrop of Semogerere had delivered DP to NRM. Semogerere was in government already. They're talking about a government.
In the umbrella government.
Yes. They're talking about a government of what? National unity or something like that. So Semogerere delivered the DP to Museveni. By the time Semogerere got out to contest 1996, Semogerere nearly came alone and he left all the DP in NRM. So when UPC also said, no, we are going to contest, they said Obote is out of the country, that's understand dynamics on the ground. The UPC people went and contested. That was to mark the beginning of UPC ideology disappearing. What we are seeing today is NRM played out in the UPC arena. Why do I say that? When Semogerere stood, UPC offered support to Semogerere. The implication of all of that is that it eroded UPC's cohesion. When Kizza
That's
Besigye,
1996.
yes, when Kizza Besigye came in 2001, even when they didn't announce openly, UPC offered support to Besigye. Even DP offered support to Besigye. 206, the same thing. The ultimate impact of this is that instead of these parties growing as parties, they were lending support to other parties. That is why when FDC was born, it was easy for FDC to recruit from UPC and DP. While NRM continued expanding its zone
into UPC,
into UPC and DP, UPC and DP were offering their remaining support to the FDC. So over a long time, people are seeing the relevance of DP and UPC almost not there. Now comes the current leadership of UPC.
of Ambassador Otunnu.
Of Ambassador Otunnu, come to even DP. These parties are having the same thing. So they don't have the core support base anymore. Remember, when Obote was in Zambia, and when there was no UPC who had crossed to NRM, UPC had a powerful organ called the Presidential Policy Commission, led by Dr. James Rwanyarare. That policy commission was more relevant to the UPC structures than the UPCs who were in parliament. Now, Rwanyarare even had a Uganda Young Congress. It was very vibrant in every district. Because the Rwanyarares offered inspiration to Rwanyarare, I remember Professor Akiki Mujaju and Makerere, the later Donia Tiberondwa, they were not in government, but they were able to keep the UPC out of government, but functioning as a political party. Now, when Cecilia Ogwal inadvertently thought that by joining parliament, they were able to take the fight forward, instead, it became another avenue of weakening UPC. The party secretariat power over membership collapsed, while MPs began feeling more powerful. So there has been that contestation. Now, and every party is facing that those in parliament want to be more visible and more powerful than their party secretariats. The secretariats can't do mobilization, can't whip, can't command, and now they're in a situation where they think they should reorganize, but they have no base to reorganize from.
Yes, but the question to Ambassador Otunnu would be, which I'll pass through you before I bring it back to Ambassador Otunnu, is he returned to the country to provide that needed leadership to the party, to reorganize it. 5 years down the road, he's just indicated by his letter of 4th March that he will not seek re-election. But if you look at the track record of the last 5 years, you're asking, how much did you impact the party to heal it, to help it from the things that...
One thing I must tell you, one, Otunnu and whoever comes to lead DP or UPC, they have already found a shift of power from the party secretariats to those in parliament. Why those in the parliament? Because those are the ones who get the resources.
Okay.
2, which environment were they going to play? 3, Ambassador Otunnu himself has a bigger say in what's happening in UPC. But I think that should come in the next quarter.
Okay.
I'll show to you where he has a bigger say in what's currently happening in the UPC.
Let me just ask a quick question to Ambassador Otunnu before you take the break. Ambassador Otunnu, so your decision not to seek re-election is in effect a resignation. You picked up a shell that Chris is talking about, and it's been killing you on your shoulders, and you can't carry it any longer. You can deliver UPC to where you felt leaving New York to come to Kampala, you're actually going to deliver it.
The purpose of coming back to Uganda and being engaged on the political scene is not because I like politics. Far from it. Particularly Ugandan politics. It's convoluted, it's rotten to the core, it's a mud. But I came back and got involved in politics because of the condition of our people.
Okay.
Because of the state in which our country is, and I couldn't bear to be on the side watching this.
Okay.
It so happens that the only way to effect political change, to remove this regime from power, whether one likes it or not, is through political engagement.
Let me give you time to pick it up after a short break.
I got involved with the politics.
I'll come back to you on this very same question after a short commercial break. We'll be right back. You're still watching the Fourth Estate on NTV, and we're discussing issues in Uganda's, the only party that has held power twice, held power for the first time, lost it, regained it, and lost it again through military coups, the Uganda People's Congress, with party president Ambassador Olara Otunnu, who has indicated that he will not seek re-election when the party holds its delegates conference and national council at a date yet to be determined, because I don't think you have a date yet, Ambassador Otunnu, on when you intend to hold those two meetings. You said you have made plans for the meetings. Have you confirmed when you intend to do those, to hold them?
No, the plans are in place. All the arrangements are in place. The funding, we've now got assurance about funding, both for the National Council and the Delegates Conference, because earlier in the previous years, the problem was the funding. But since last year, the problem is not the funding, the problem is the court injunction which is being put on the party by the Akena Pulkol group.
Now,
so as soon as that injunction is lifted by the Akena Pulkol group, we are ready first for a national council, then a delegates conference in that order.
But
that is what my communication of 4th March was about.
For the people watching you, really to say that we spent 4 years without holding these key meetings because we didn't have money, and then all of a sudden you have another very convenient excuse in the court injunction. Going by what our court systems, how our court systems function sometimes, this injunction may not be lifted until next year because the case may not be had. I mean, the issue they took, David Pulkol and Jimmy Akena took to court, may not be resolved until next year. So Ambassador Otunnu will still be president of the Uganda People's Congress without seeking, renewing your mandate.
Charles, the party leadership did not go to court. We've never taken anybody to court. It is the Akena Pulkol group that went to court. It is the Akena Pulkol group that sought and imposed an injunction on the party leadership. You cannot have a party gathering like the National Council, the Delegates Conference, when there is a court injunction that freezes all political activities. It's very easy to cure that. Mm-hmm. It's not anything complicated, which is why in my statement at the beginning of this month, I said clearly it is what members of the party throughout the country are saying. Those who impose the injunction lift the injunction. But they can do it like this. No, hold on.
Ambassador Otunnu.
No, please hold on. Those who impose the injunction can lift it tomorrow. Why have
Ambassador
they not lifted
Otunnu, and exactly that's my question to you. How do you feel? You, Olara Otunnu, presiding over a party and mentioning key party leaders, Jimmy Akena, son to past President Milton Obote. David Pulkol has been a child of the party. And you are saying the Akena Pulkol group. What kind of party have you been presiding over the last 5 years?
No, it takes two to tango. I must assume responsibility for what the national leadership has been doing. I cannot assume responsibility for what Honorable Jimmy Akena and David Pulkol have been doing. You must ask them that question.
Did you promise?
You must ask them why they went to court. You must ask them if they have the interest of the party at heart. How come they would impose injunction which freezes the activities, the mobilization, the organization of party activities?
And we
that's
must ask you.
No, that's a question you should address. That's a question you should address to them. I cannot assume responsibility for them. I have challenged them and said they must immediately remove the injunction. We are ready to go to National Council. We are ready to hold the Delegates Conference. The funding, which had been a problem, we've now been assured by Milton Obote Foundation that funding will be available, but we need the injunction out of the way. Those who imposed it can remove it tomorrow. What is stopping them from doing so?
The question to you would be, you promised to build party cohesion. You have failed to build party cohesion.
Actually, as you heard from Chris, if you are talking about conflict within the party, it precedes me by many, many, many years.
And you're not part of it?
Most of the episodes that he's referring to, Milton Obote was still alive and in Zambia. The time that Dr. Wanyarare was presiding the Presidential Commission and all the conflicts that went on. the time that Cecilia Ogwal was involved with the party, the time that Mama Miria Obote was head of the party, and the court actions and the suspensions and the expulsions, actually, it is under my presidency that nobody has ever been suspended or expelled from UPC.
And exactly, Chris. Chris, let me put this, let's bring Chris into this discussion. The time he's referring to, in exile, Obote managed somehow to keep UPC together. Until his unfortunate demise, he managed in some way to keep it together. From the time he's been away, UPC fought, had a number of court cases to challenge some obnoxious provisions within the constitution or within the legal system that kept political parties dysfunctional. They were able to hold that party together. Now that the party seems to be free to be able to function, it actually can't function. It's a shell that Otunnu is
see,
over.
Typical of me, Charles, I don't mince words on some of these issues, because by discussing UPC, we are discussing the democratic process in this country, which is laughable at its best. The congressmen, the congresswomen out there are many. UPC is now a latent force. People decided to just watch because they feel detached from the party activities. And all of this is coming because the party has been betrayed by its leadership. The party feels alienated from its activities. In fact, apart from donating its support base to the NRM and then later to FDC, both what UPC and DP did, they basically donated their support to the NRM, which had no mass support in this country. And then now they are struggling to recapture the same support, and they are finding difficulties. Why? You see, Charles, the country in general suffers from lack of consensus brokers. Conflict in politics is inevitable. It is the existence of people who are able to balance these conflicts that matters. So we are seeing a deficiency of consensus brokerage in UPC. We are seeing it in DP. In the NRM, you know, the consensus broker is Museveni. To make matters worse, in many cases, actually, it is now the NRM brokering peace in political parties. And that is very dangerous for a democratic process in this country. Now, when that happens, the actual congressmen, congresswomen are just there trying to say, maybe waiting for God to come. Because on their own, they feel disenfranchised. Ambassador Olara Otunnu, you can never fault Olara Otunnu on the ideology of UPC, on the clarity of UPC mission. He understands it perfectly. But Ambassador Otunnu falls short of the ability to create a political domain, that zone of influence where you actually now actualize your philosophy. And that's why we're having these problems. So Olara Otunnu can explain to you what UPC stands for. And what this country needs is a very good diagnostic doctor, but unable to offer treatment to the patient.
And I thought that's what...
Hold on there. So in the absence of that brokerage, you find now that the party actually cannot, from 2010, Charles, the UPC up to today has not had party structures. So when I hear Pulukola, Kena wanting to stand, that party constitution talks about, for you to become a party president, you must have endorsement of a third of the districts, councils of UPC. I am not aware of when UPC held elections for the party structures. So when Pulukola Kena want to stand, on the basis of what? And this was a burden on Ambassador Olara Otunnu. And unfortunately, even under his watch, we have not seen the branches of the party working. You get it? So much as we need to accept his commitment to the good Uganda, but his ability to create the political realms through which this commitment can be made possible is questionable.
Let him respond.
That now gives credence to the other forces to divide the same party. At Uganda House here, the way it is run, somebody runs the parking lot, somebody runs the shops, somebody runs what. You don't see who runs what.
I thought that's the function of MOF.
Yes, but that MOF, if you didn't know, was a philosophy of the Congress to run Congress affairs.
Okay.
But now, if these fellows cannot demonstrate leadership in this Uganda House, how possible can you convince the peasants now that you are able to run the affairs?
Ambassador Otunnu, there was no court injunction when you're supposed to start putting together the party structures to elect, to make party branches functional. And the UPC that you joined as a young man did not receive funding from MOF. It was actually creating MOF to help it fund, but party members funded the party. Or am I wrong about that?
You're actually wrong. I'm sorry to say you're wrong, and the information is very much in the public domain.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 episodes before the courts by the Kanapul Call Group. The first case they took to the court was precisely about stopping the party leadership from continuing to conduct grassroots elections within the party. That was the very purpose of that first case.
When was that?
You should know this.
Mm-hmm.
This was in 2013, which continues to this day. Then the second story was about we were conducting elections. We conducted elections in 2010 under my leadership after I was elected. Mm. We conducted elections in 2011. We conducted elections in 2012. Last year, we had a program to conduct elections throughout the country. And the court cases have been precisely about stopping that mobilization, the holding of elections from taking place, which is why members are asking, if your interest is the party, if you want to strengthen the party, how do you do it? By precisely stopping the program, the process, which is renewing party leadership and renewing the grassroots structures. So the first case, the main case, was brought by the Kanapul Call Group to stop the party leadership continuing to conduct the grassroots elections. The injunction appended to that was to stop the party leadership conducting any activities at all. That's
so under what?
Just hold on.
Under what arrangement are you arranging this delegates conference?
No, please hold on. No, you're not jumping to delegates conference. I'm talking about the party structures about which you asked, the structures on the ground, the leadership. And then the third case, which was brought just a week ago, on the 16th of March, by Honorable Betty Amongi, by Honorable Ebil, was to have the courts declare null and void all the grassroots and party structure elections conducted since I became leader, which is to say, and they say so explicitly, you can read this, it is in the public domain, that the elections outcome of 2010, of 2011, of 2012, and last year, we'd already done a large part of the country, that all those elected under those arrangements should be declared null and void. So in fact, the purpose of the court cases is to precisely frustrate party activities, stop party leaders from doing what we undertook to do, from mobilizing, organizing, and renewing party structures.
Ambassador Otunnu, speak to a person.
But am I correct about what I just said?
No, Charles, before you even say that, Ambassador Otunnu should demonstrate with examples, should show if the party has been mobilizing, where is the youth activity in the party? When you hear UPC talking, the same people, same groups, same camps, the UPCs have young people. This is why one of your best supporters in Lira, who is this gentleman? Aroma. Aroma is a product of the Young Congress. And he has been able to help you even diffuse the fights here. You remember, even just when the Pulkos had meetings in Lugogo, you did not even want Aroma to do the right thing to go and stop the conference. So while we think that the Pulkos are doing a wrong thing, you need to do a self-audit. That why me, Olara Otunnu, came with a promise, and every Congress person said, this is the man, this is our weapon. Why is there increasing animosity? Is there a part you are playing as Ambassador Olara Otunnu? Or you have taken a self-righteous posture that as you know it, so it should be. And that cannot work in the third world politics. That is best placed for the international politics, where the level of understanding is nearly the same. So people in UPC feel that your own disposition, your own approach to their issues is wanting. One, they say you are too rigid, you are basically self-righteous, you can scatter anything for as long as you are not convinced about it. Okay. And yet politics, Charles, primarily is a game of numbers. Otunnu's knowledge, Otunnu's abilities cannot translate to winning a constituency. It will require Otunnu's knowledge, Mwangushia's part, or Bore's part to complete the whole. Now, if you're not willing to give and take, then Ambassador Otunnu, we will treat you like a Kena, that all of you are traitors to the UPC.
Can you respond to that?
Can I just respond to that? Actually, you are wrong. It was exactly the National Council convened by me that passed a resolution proposed by me that in UPC we should re-establish the Youth League and the Women's League. You'll recall that in earlier conflicts in UPC, under Milton Obote, the Youth League was abolished. And it was in 2012, January 2012, following the National Council, at a party cabinet meeting, I presided over that. I put a proposal re-establishing the Youth League and the Women's League. Patrick Aroma, of whom you speak, I am the one who appointed Patrick Aroma as the National Youth leader of UPC. He's the head of the Youth League up to this day. I'm the one who appointed him. So actually the activities of Patrick Aroma, together with other people like Susan Ezatia and Ruth, they are people who have been seeking to re-establish the youth and re-establish the Women's League, re-establish under my leadership. But can I just finish?
Under Ranyarare, there was the Uganda Young Congress.
Just a moment. Just a moment, Chris. Ambassador Otunnu, you emerged out of Nambole, you said, on this show a few minutes ago, with 70% support and 30% support spread among 7 other opponents you faced in Nambole has disorganized you and made you fail to function and build that party.
But I wish
Isn't that an irony?
I wish at least, instead of posing rhetorical questions that you answer, I wish you listen to the facts. You asked me about the Youth League, you asked me about the Women's League. I've just given you factual information. You told me about information you told me about Patrick Aroma.
To you.
No, it isn't according to me.
Yes.
Patrick Aroma was appointed by me to be the youth leader of UPC after the re-establishment of UPC Youth League under my leadership. UPC Youth League, in the earlier conflicts in UPC between left and right, had been abolished way back. There were various informal arrangements put in place, but the formal re-establishment of UPC Youth League and the Women's Youth League has been under my leadership. So you cannot, on the one hand, cite that example as a good example of UPC leadership, which I put in place and I preside over, and subtract it from what I've contributed to
what
UPC.
What I think Chris was talking about is there was a time when UPC Youth League functioned.
This was in the 60s, by the way.
No.
UPC Youth League stopped in the 60s.
As recent as
Dr. Ranyarare's time.
No. These were the informal arrangements which were put in place. UPC Youth League was abolished in the 60s, was re-established in 2012 under my leadership. Patrick Aroma is the first leader of UPC Youth League since the 60s.
Ambassador Otunnu, the problem with your example now is that Patrick Aroma is a young man. You appointed the youth leader who emerged from the same UPC that had been banned, who was able to speak and make UPC visible
because the
and
UPC
vibrant
allowed
because
him to speak.
There was something that allowed him to speak. Under your leadership, there is no visible youth league that is functional, that speaks for UPC.
But the example, there's something I'm missing. The very example you are citing is an example that I put in place.
Doctor,
please hold on. The very Patrick Aroma you are citing, I appointed him.
Let me explain to you.
The youth groups that you are saying are being organized, you are talking about organization
Before Chris explains to you.
2012.
Yes, Chris, the Patrick Aroma you're talking about is a Patrick Aroma we got to know as journalists before you came back into the country. So when you established him and now nobody can see him, we're wondering how
this is the point, Ambassador.
Yes.
While you were away, I can give you examples. There was Uganda Young Congress, formal or informal. And this is what they used to do. They were at the front line of opposing everything NRM. They were in the airwaves, they were in the villages, they were being supervised by the late Professor Kiki Mujaju, the late Dr. Donia Tiberondwa. Ranyarare is still alive. Cecilia Imato-Gwal is alive. She's now in FDC. And this is what they used to do. When it came to referendum, 2000, the youth of UPC were everywhere, like the party itself. In 1996, the IPFC, the youth of UPC were everywhere, whether they were formal or not formal, but they were visible. In Mbale, where I was and where I grew up, the whole of Mbale town would be painted red because of the activities of the Uganda Young Congress. You are talking about the legality of the activities then, according to the constitution. Yes, they may not have been illegal, but the actions were visible. Under your legal youth league, the youth are nowhere. When you are fighting, the youth are lost. So we are saying, why shouldn't the youth be at the core of the activity, given the background that Dr. Apollo Milton Obote, with the UPC, focused on growing young leaders. In fact, the NRM today is run by the leaders mentored by Apollo Milton Obote. And under your leadership, we are not seeing you moving with these young people. Where are they?
Well, can I say two things? First, I think everybody knows that some of the best and brightest in UPC, well before my time, they went to lead NRM. And most of the leadership of NRM are from UPC. It's well before I got involved, well before I returned to the country.
Because there was a leader who nurtured them.
While Milton Obote was still alive, okay, a lot of UPC leaders went to FDC well before my time, okay? So UPC ranks, some of the best and brightest, the ranks were depleted. They went to the other parties for a combination of reasons. We don't need to go into that. Nevertheless, some critical mass still remained within UPC.
Which one?
There have been conflicts within the party. The conflicts that you talked about earlier, actually, Milton Obote was still alive. While he was alive in Zambia, terrible, terrible bloodletting went on within UPC, as you know very well. Before Dr. Wanyarare, during Dr. Wanyarare, before Cecilia Gwal, during Cecilia Gwal, all the way to the time of Mama Miriam Obote. As I said, even though you see the Akena Polkol group jumping up and down, this has actually been the most tolerant UPC leadership ever.
And under your leadership,
Ambassador
Otunnu, yes.
Yeah, please. It's been the most tolerant UPC leadership ever. We've never taken anybody to court. We've never expelled anybody from the party. We've never suspended anybody. Our view has been that if you have a different view, you come, we discuss within the party as our internal matter, within the party structure, within the party constitution. We go to the party organs like we did in the National Council. We argue our points of view. The party organ decides. We've had an open door policy to this day, which is what my second paper is about dialogue within the party.
Ambassador Otunnu, Chris called it self-righteousness. It's something you've been accused of by party members. Are you willing to take any responsibility for some of the failures of the functioning of UPC under your leadership?
Charles, you cannot speak in generality, my dear friend. You brought specific examples. When I've told you those examples don't apply and given you the facts, you shift.
No.
You give me specifics. You say there is this. You said, for example.
Okay. I will.
There is this which is happened.
I will in a moment.
Under my leadership.
Under your leadership.
I'm happy to say this is a situation. I'm responsible for this. So and so is responsible for this.
Okay.
But you can't say
let me
generality.
just answer that. Under your leadership, yes. Henry Mayaga decamped. He was one of the leaders of the Presidential Policy Commission for some time. Under your leadership, President Museveni made the biggest harvest of young leaders of the party whom he appointed RDCs. I can list for you names of people who were all over media here keeping the UPC name alive. Yes. They decamped under your leadership.
Yes.
Under your leadership, you're talking about the Akena Purkol camp.
Yes.
There's never been a sharper divide within the UPC.
No, you are wrong. Let me just reply to you. You are wrong. I'm sorry. If you compare the conflicts of the past within UPC, including when Milton Obote was still alive, is nothing compared with what you are seeing.
And if you
today.
compare the support of the UPC under your leadership.
Can I finish, please?
Sure.
You give the example of Henry Mayega. You can also speak of Haji Wegulo. These are people who were in party leadership before my time. They were suspected of working for the NRM for a long time. There was a sense of denial about this. And finally, they outed themselves and identified where they belonged all along. It is Henry Mayega, it is Haji Wegulo. Then the young people you're talking about, I assume that there are two people you're referring to particularly. Okay, one is Moses Nwagaba. I am the one who said from the very beginning that Moses Nwagaba, before he outed himself, that Moses Nwagaba was planted by the NRM within UPC.
And you appointed him spokesperson for the party?
Yes, deputy spokesperson for the party, before I realized the situation. And when I said, these people said, oh, you are just looking for excuses. Within months, Moses Nwagaba owned up and returned to where he had been controlled all along. So you're talking about two youth, and then you've got
who's the second youth?
From Bale.
Eric Sakwa.
Eric Sakwa. Two young people who were leaders within UPC who crossed over. Eric Sakwa, until the last minute, I had no idea that he was working for the NRM. Him, I don't recall. He didn't work closely under my leadership. He must have been under Mama Maria. But these two, Eric Sakwa and Moses Nwagaba, yes. That is correct.
I will list for you.
Two young leaders.
So you have an excuse. I'm afraid, Chris, we have to take the break. We have overshot our time. Let me start with you when we come out of the break. We'll be right back. Welcome to the last segment of the Fourth Estate, featuring Ambassador Olara Otunnu, Party President of the Uganda People's Congress. Chris, you wanted to come in just before we took the break.
Charles, there is nothing absolutely wrong with NRM planting spies in UPC, spies in FDC, spies in DP. It is just how politics is played.
Spies in newsrooms, spies in businesses,
and there's nothing wrong with UPC planting spies in the State House. So when we pick talking about, these were agents of Museveni, then our political astuteness comes into question. Armies know that when they are fighting war, the enemy tries to gather as much as possible from your side. So what you do, you build your capacity to gather as much from
the other side.
Now, all parties in Uganda, they have a soft landing of saying, those are NRM malls. Museveni should be crying that I have UPC malls. Not you, UPC, crying that Museveni has malls. Yet you must know. The question here is, where is the ability of Mr. Olara Otunnu to create a robust UPC which is able to equip itself with the political ammunition to repulse the infiltration?
To be able to infiltrate all the
other parties. Now, Olara Otunnu has fallen to the same DP, FDC cry, oh, these are NRM, oh, these are NRM. There is no way worldwide, and Otunnu knows it best. He has moved to almost every country in this world. He is a mediator in the talks between serious countries. Olara Otunnu here. We have a great man in our midst. We have a man who can open doors. But we are simply saying seems like he does not have the nitty-gritty of what the Ugandan political terrain demands now. Because while he has a good vision, you cannot achieve anything without a political domain. That zone of influence where you are able to exert your values. Now, Olara Otunnu is caught in a conflict that I want to be this Puritan, I want to lead Uganda this way, yet to lead Uganda there, he must have the power.
Okay.
He is showing his shot on how to get the power, even within UPC, and even to use the power he has. That's why UPC is not moving. So we are saying, as a country, how do we help Olara Otunnu? Because we don't want to waste him away. Because other countries know he's a good guy. Now, Otunnu must open up. If it is true that he has that feeling of self-righteousness, then he must come down and reconcile his vision, his values with the dynamics on the ground.
Okay.
So, one of the ways for UPC to heal, I can tell you, there shouldn't be a leader from Acholi or Lango in UPC for some good time. For as long as you're going to have an Acholi there, a Langi there, you are going to see petty home quarrels coming to the headquarters. And then they will restrict UPC to Chitugum and a bit of Lango, which is dangerous.
I the Congress wants is good people with the right vision for it.
The Congress has a very wide sphere of support. I told you last time, the Congress is in Fort Portal, you know that. The Congress is in Kizgezi. The Congress is in Busia. It is in the Buvuma Islands. The trouble now is the way they are playing the politics is actually to fit into the plan of the NRM to keep it weak.
Ambassador Otunnu, some of the criticism coming to you personally, yes, adding to what he has just said, is that you grossly miscalculated the political environment you're returning to when you decided to come back to the country and to offer yourself to lead the Uganda People's Congress.
I knew it was a very convoluted scene. It was very rotten. It was very vicious. Maybe it turned out to be even more convoluted, even more vicious than I imagined. But I didn't have a lot of illusions. The magnitude may be somewhat different. By the way, Chris, I think it is in order, whether it is UPC or DP or FDC, to say we have discovered that there is an NRM operation within our ranks. Now, once they have said that, it depends what they do with it. But there's nothing wrong with them saying, yes, so-and-so, or this group is actually being sponsored by the NRM. You have a statement here, for example, which you've seen, out of Lera. This is not me making a statement. The statement's heading is, UPC is not ready to accommodate malls in the party. This is out of Lango sub-region. They are saying we've identified certain leaders who are in bed with Museveni. They are being sponsored by Museveni to disorganize UPC, to destabilize UPC, and here is what we propose to do about that. I suppose that's what you're talking about. So there is action that UPC members are saying when the moment comes for re-election, when the moment comes to elect the national leadership, we want to distinguish between genuine UPC leaders, no matter their views, whether they agree or disagree with Olara Otunnu, and those who we now know are working on Museveni's agenda. There's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly in order. It is wrong if you say we know that there are Museveni agents working within UPC and you do nothing about it. Which is why, in my view,
you're crying about
no. I'm not in that business. Please, you should ask David Pulcol. I'm not in that business, okay? My business is how to work within UPC and UPC with other political leaders to effect political change. But to say that we have discovered so-and-so is working for Museveni, that's a factual political statement, and then you proceed to say we shall do the following about it. For example, in the case of UPC, we're at crossroads. When the time comes to elect my successor, UPC members will have to decide between leaders who they have identified to be working for Museveni and those who they know are still committed to the party, committed to the people of Uganda and to the UPC mission. You will see the outcome. That is when that's when ideas are put into action. But there's nothing wrong with them saying we've discovered this.
Let me go back to the question I put to you before. How could you, Olara Otunnu, emerge out of Nambole with 70% support within the party and fail to build on 70% support to build UPC?
No, but you see, Charles, you are still talking in generalities. You are stuck to your generality. You are not being specific. I can't answer the generalities.
No.
I've given you. Let me just no. Can I just finish?
Sure.
Can I just finish, please? I have been able to raise the profile of UPC, the message of UPC, what UPC stands for, why it is important that UPC's role in the politics and the future of this country should remain firm. I have been able to say within UPC we must have vigorous political dialogue, we must have vigorous democracy, which is why under my leadership... No, please, may I just finish? No, please. I have listened to you carefully.
I'm listening to you.
No, you should at least let me finish.
I am listening to you.
You can't ask a question when I'm answering, you interrupt and move on when I'm answering. Let me just finish, please. Under my leadership, I've said we are not going to expel or suspend a UPC member. When we have political differences, we must sit down and ask political leaders, treat it politically, discuss it, which is why we've had an open door policy up to now. I have said as leader of UPC, in addition to rebuilding UPC, at this particular point in our history, we must reach out and cooperate and build a togetherness with other political parties, other patriotic forces. We discussed this in the National Council of UPC. Honorable Jim McKenna took a different position. The delegates decided decisively in favor of cooperating with other political parties. And I proceeded, let me finish, please. I proceeded to put that in practice. I've spent a good deal of time working as leader of UPC with other political parties, other forces, to build what we now have as the togetherness of the opposition. I can give you other examples.
We're listening to you. We're listening to you. Yes, we're listening to you.
Charles,
do you think?
Let me explain to Ambassador Olara Otunnu. Ambassador, no one faults your ability to build a UPC profile. Nobody even faults your capability to design transformatory policies for this country. But we are challenging on your ability to play the politics fast. And if you talk about building a profile, you must demonstrate it to me that the profile you have built has led to an increased number of UPC supporters. And how do we assess the increase in numbers? There are different political arenas, but the easiest is the constituency. The arenas prevalent now in our country is from LOC1 to the presidency. Demonstrate to us that since you build a profile, this is the number of LOC1 chairpersons the Congress has got. This is the number of LOC3 chairpersons the Congress has got. And this is the number of district chairmen UPC has. This is the number of MPs UPC has. In all of those, you are performing dismally. And if you are not able to capture positions, the zones of influence for a political party, the profile you are building, perhaps for some donors, not for the constituency.
Well,
this is how I understand politics.
Exactly, that's the question I wanted to
put. Let me just answer that. First, you need to rebuild the structures of the party. You need to rejuvenate and renew the leadership of the party at every level, which is what I've concentrated a lot of our effort on, which is the subject of the challenge by the Akenapol Call Group. You can't run away from that. Both politically and legally, this has been their point of contestation, that we cannot proceed with the rebuilding of the structures that we did in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2014. Indeed, they have gone to court to say all that should stop, because they saw that in their view as a threat rather than as something which builds a party, which is partly why many party members know that they're working for some other agenda other than the strengthening of the party. So you begin by rebuilding. You begin by re-establishing a vigorous youth and women league. After having not been there for a long time, it will take time for that to gain momentum. But you begin by taking measures.
But you see what Charles is saying.
No, may I just finish, please? May I just finish, please? I say we re-establish these, and then that is what you will translate into general elections to say, now how can we use these structures to gain more LC2s, LC3, LC5s? So that will be tested in the general election. What we have been doing over the last several years should be allowed to continue, to be completed. Then in the elections, when they're free and fair, you can test.
But what Charles is saying, Ambassador Otunnu, one, we must, I'm known for being honest. No, nothing personal. You must accept that the Congress party was here and loved by many people. When people begin to talk about what we call generalities, one, you must show us here that one, you have the ability not just to play rhetoric of how Museveni is this, how Museveni is that, but demonstrate that you are able to get different views from yours. Those may agree with you and those that disagree with you. To what extent do you take what others say? It is clearly being talked that your biggest undoing is repulsing the input of other leaders. The people who welcomed you from abroad, people who came up to Nairobi to welcome you, the Bill were in the airport with you. The Leonard Oculus were with you.
He was not.
Okay?
Bill was not.
These people were with you to the point that when they make proposals on what they think can catapult a party to another level, one, you throw a blanket, these are malls. When they try to lobby, to ask you that you have all these connections world over, you have chaired so many boards world over, you can attract funding to UPC, has Olara Otunnu. Even when they want your only endorsement, that they are going to lobby money to run UPC with your blessing, you say no. They actually look at you now as a person pretending to love UPC dearly, but increasingly getting the UPC ideology lost. Okay. Because you are not willing to use your so-called networks to develop UPC. So you explain to us.
Very good.
Are you open?
Okay, can I just explain that to you?
Sure, yes.
Actually, you can fault me about many things. You can't fault me about being afraid of discussion, of debates, of contentions, whether within the party or elsewhere. Which is why I've said to you that whether in the party cabinet, in the National Council, I have been happy to have different points of view expressed. In my own statements, over and over again, when I've been asked, what do you say about Major Wangaranga? What do you say about so-and-so? You've never heard me denounce them, not once. Even when asked by your own colleagues in the media, I've said, these are people who have made their contribution to the party, to the country. I honor their contribution. Even with a different point of view, we'll sit down as a party and discuss. That's been my point of view all through. We've had an open door policy. Honorable Jimmy Akena comes to Uganda House all the time. So that's David Pulkon. He was there just 2-3 days ago. They all walk in and out of Uganda House. But we say, when the party has made a decision, like in the National Council, that this is the direction we should take, we should honor that. We should respect that.
Okay.
Until that position has been changed. The second point you make, Chris, I'm sorry to disappoint you. It is a complete humbug. It's complete nonsense. No occasion has ever occurred. This is the David Pulkon Akena propaganda. I'm sorry to disappoint you. When they have come to me and said, so and so is willing to contribute, will you sign here? It has never happened. The occasion when David Pulkon told me he knew people in Sudan, he knew people in South Africa, he could go and raise funds for the parties. I said, please go, make all the contacts, come and report to me. I asked him over and over again what is happening in the discussion. Nothing doing to this day. You are being fed a whole mountain of disinformation.
That is their side.
You told me
your own international connections. Yes. To what extent have you used them to help organize UPC?
Okay.
If theirs is from malls, what about you?
Let me just add to Chris's question. Under your leadership of UPC, apart from waiting for MOF to fund, or DGF, which was formerly DDP, to fund UPC, what resources have you brought into the party?
Well, let me give you an example. We got very significant resources from DDP under my leadership, and it was for program to renew exactly the grassroots structures within the party. In December 2011, January 2012, 100 million shillings of those funds were diverted. The person who presided, the architect and the superintendent of that fraudulent scheme was David Pulkon. That was the reason for the cabinet reshuffle of January 2012. To this day, as I speak to you, those funds have not been accounted for. Indeed, we are having difficulties with the consortium of funders who had provided that money. We gave a new program which is excellent, there's no problem with it, but at the end they said, we want the reimbursement of the funds which were diverted before we can give you new monies. This is the same David Pulkol who is talking about offering UPC a new vision.
Okay.
The same David Pulkol who actually forged my signature, forged the signature of the party president. So, yes,
let me just inform our listener. Let me just inform our viewers that David Pulkol, just a moment, that David Pulkol was supposed to be on this show and cancelled on us at the last minute. So I don't know what happened to David. I'm sure he's watching this show now, but he needs maybe to account for why he was unable to come and debate.
I would have wanted very much for Mr. David Pulkol, for Honorable Jimmy Akena, for Honorable Betty Amongi. I had been given the impression they would be here.
Yes.
I wanted very much to hear from them firsthand, for them to contradict what I am saying. I'm disappointed that they are not here. I came here hoping they would be here.
Okay, just a quick question. You describe the actions of David Pulkol as fraud. And you, as a lawyer, as a man who has who upholds these moral values, you stopped it at fraud, and as UPC you couldn't take this to another step?
No, actually, we have taken steps. Initially, the funders themselves didn't want us to take those particular steps. We pressed very hard for complete forensic investigation. We pressed very hard for police action, for criminal action, but the funders initially did not want that. We've now come to a clear understanding that for our own purposes as UPC, we cannot accept that any of our leaders, no matter what their position, can take funds, significant funds which are meant for party activities, divert them for personal use, and get away without accounting for this. So we are pursuing the matter at various
After
levels.
this show, the discussion tomorrow will be, you have had fundamental disagreements with David Pulkol, with Jimmy Akena, and all you're trying to do now is malign his name. One, he's not here to defend himself, but two, you have already indicated that you're decamping from the leadership of UPC and won't be able to resolve that issue.
No, Charles, again, you are wrong. What I'm reporting to you, you know, has been on the table in the public domain since January of 2012. Today isn't the first time I'm talking about it. In the statement you have here in front of you, the 4th of March, I make reference to this issue, that when there is dialogue within the party, among the issues we must address are leaders who diverted funds from the party.
Okay.
This is not anything new. And secondly, hold on. You had told me David Pulkol and Betty Amongi and Akena would be here. I'm not the one who stopped them from coming. I came hoping they would be here.
I'm afraid that time is out.
So you can't say that they are being maligned in their absence. These are matters which have been in the public domain for some years.
With you.
And I came here knowing very well that they would be here.
Chris, I'm sorry. I made the statement that David Pulkol was invited. He confirmed that he would be coming. Jimmy Akena and Betty Amongi didn't confirm that they would come.
Why didn't they come?
Let the police allow me to say this, Charles.
Yes, our time is out, so you need to keep it very brief.
You see, Ambassador Otunnu, the precise thing here is, to the genuine members of UPC, I think they have a right to treat all of you as suspects.
No,
as people,
I'm sorry.
Hold on. As
no,
people who
I'm
are
sorry.
not
You've got to go by the facts.
Hold on. As people who are not holding the true ideals of the Congress.
No,
if Apollo Milton Obote resurfaced today, in fact, his spirit would strike both of you dead. And here's why. Increasingly, you don't have the mobilization abilities Obote had. You don't have the charisma Obote wielded. You have chosen to join the dance of monkeys, but you want to dance at the taxi park. If you want to dance with the monkeys, dance in the forest.
Okay.
Can I just no, you
yes,
can't let me grab that.
So
no, I'm very sorry.
Sure.
First of all, Chris, you are being ahistorical, because you yourself know that some of the bloodiest and worst conflicts within UPC took place while Milton Obote was still alive.
But UPC
hold on, please.
UPC built the country.
No. We are talking about the conflicts of the last several years. The worst episodes of the conflicts, Milton Obote was still alive in Zambia, issuing instructions, issuing orders, while these conflicts were going on. I'm not passing judgment on them, but it's as a factual matter. And this continued up until I took over the leadership of UPC. And secondly, you cannot assume and generalize the responsibility of what is happening. I must assume responsibility for what I've done or not done as a leader. But you have to be willing to take to the doorstep of Honorable Akana, of Mr. Paul Cole, of Honorable Betty Amongi, for what they have done,
And
which members of the parties, which members of the party.
Stopped with the party president,
but again,
it?
you see, well, you
It
see,
doesn't.
but
Because they have
again,
been here.
you have
It
to,
doesn't. Told them here.
I'm sorry, you have to ask them and hold them accountable for what they've done. When I tell you 100 million shillings have been taken, which are factual matter, is not being made up, it's not something being said today. You sweep that under the carpet, and at the same time you're saying, where does the thing stop? You can't do that. You can't do that. You have to be factual.
Interestingly,
you have to be
Ambassador
faithful to
Otunnu,
history.
Ambassador
You
Otunnu
offered to lead
refuses-
UPC.
Yes, Ambassador Otunnu refuses completely to answer a question. What resources did you bring into the UPC apart from waiting on MOF?
No, but I just give you an example.
DPP funding.
Yes,
Ambassador Otunnu,
please.
let's speak facts. The DPP funding started long before you returned to the country. There was a program. Just a moment. DDP was developed as a program after the 2006 elections. It provided funding to political parties, including the FDC, the UPC, the DP, until the election of 2011. So the resources that came were part of a long program. Your own contribution to say, between 2010 when I took over, these are the new sources of funding I discovered for the party. You can't account, you can't say.
No, I'm sorry. Again, you're answering your own question. How are party activities being conducted all this time? The grassroots elections I'm talking about of 2010, I'm already president, 2011, of 2012, of 2014, how have they been conducted? No, excuse me, please. The very activities which have been the subject of injunction, which have been the subject of court cases, that they must stop, they cannot go on. The activities throughout the regions in which I have participated in mobilization, throughout the country, no UPC president... Excuse me, please.
Are you willing to take responsibility for the state in which UPC is?
Excuse me, please.
Are you willing? Are you willing?
Charles, you ask a specific responsibility.
Yes. Are you willing to take responsibility for the state in which UPC is today?
You ask a specific question.
Could you answer that
Where
question,
are
please?
the funds? I'm answering you. You jump and head to something else.
Because
you ask something, I'm answering you a specific question to a specific answer. You jump to something else.
Yes. Do you know why?
I'll just leave it at that.
Do you know why?
I'll leave it at that.
I know you to be a man who knows how to give a straight answer to the question, not a man who will run around.
But I'm giving you a straight answer. You're the one who shifts the goalpost. You ask me very specifically. Can you tell me about the funds you brought? I'm answering you, giving you specific examples of activities going on which cannot be done without funding. You immediately shift to something more general.
Otunnu, honestly to our viewers,
I leave it at that.
What is difficult? You said David Purcell diverted fraudulently 100 million.
Which is a fact. It's a fact.
Straight answer.
It's a fact,
What
yes.
is difficult with you saying, I brought in 200 million from this organization, I brought in this much from this, I brought in this much, instead of going in a roundabout way, we held activities and those activities were funded.
But
is that a difficult thing to do?
Well, do you hold the kind of activities I'm talking to you about? Do you get fundings from NIMD? Do you know NIMD? NIMD,
yes.
from Holland. It's a foundation which funds some activities in this country. The funding has been under my leadership. The DGF have been giving funding to us under my leadership. The monies which were used for campaigns in 2011 for our candidates all came through me.
Okay.
All the parliamentary...
But the only thing,
But
Ambassador
see,
Otunnu,
but
all this is coming to you because, one, you offered to lead UPC to the promised land. But increasingly, people are saying, you, Otunnu, Akena, and his wife Amongi, instead of leading UPC
Chris,
to heaven,
no, I'm sorry.
your journey seems to be heading to hell.
Chris, Chris.
Our time is out.
If you choose to speak in such generalities without being specific, without differentiating between responsibilities and accountability, I cannot answer.
Okay.
Because
Our
it's
time is out.
impossible
Our time is out. We need to get out of here.
I disagree with
Chris,
you.
I just read one thing that Ambassador Otunnu wrote. He knows his diction well. And he says, incidentally, in connection with the above, I should like to inform you all and all party members that I do not plan to seek a second term of office as party president. I plan to devote all my political energies and attention to the central project of effecting democratic change in our country. Why you chose the word incidentally, I do not know.
Very simple. Because the main subject of this communication was the convocation of the National Council and the Delegates Conference. All this is talking about the arrangements, the plan, the funding, and the timing for the Delegates Conference. But since we're talking about Delegates Conference, among the functions of the Delegates Conference, certainly the next Delegates Conference would be the occasion to renew national party leadership. So I thought this is the moment. This is the connection in which I should indicate that come that delegates conference, I will not be seeking re-election.
Thank you very much.
That's the reason why.
Thank you very much. Our time is out. Thank you very much, Ambassador Otunnu, for making time for the show. Thank you very much to you, all our viewers, for joining us tonight, and thank you very much, my colleague Chris.
I just want to know how much is NRM paying to buy UPC?
Thank you very much. And we haven't discussed the aspect of the debate of taking a loan for expansion of Uganda House, which everybody believes in UPC, and in, some people in UPC believe was the thing that would have delivered Uganda House to some.
The problem that UPC is a spirit. It
Our
will
time is
haunt
out.
all of those who have.
Our time is out.
I'm sorry, you're now talking about the Milton Obote Foundation, not about UPC.
Yes.
I cannot speak for that. I cannot explain
I did not raise that discussion
that
because I knew we need to talk about the
UPC is
politics.
a spirit.
Our time
It
is
will
out. Thank you
torture
very
all
much.
those who are betraying it.
And have a good night.